Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS. My name is Abhijit Srivastav. We are here to discuss daily news analysis. Today is 21st February 2024 and let's have a quick overview on the topics that we are going to discuss today. First article is from page number 10 of the Hindu Daily edition, having panchayats as self-governing institutions. So how Panchayati Raj institutions evolved in post-independent India? What are the issues that are grappling the functioning of Panchayati Raj institutions? Second article is why are farmers protesting again? 2 days before, we discussed about the agro-food policies which are benefiting consumers at the expense of producers. At this juncture, we will be discussing the methodology, the demands and means used by farmers' protest or farmers' movements. Third article is amount of tiny particles in the bottled water underestimated. So a new recent study conducted by Columbia University, which is discussing about plastic pollution, specifically nano and microplastic pollution in bottled water. Next article talks about El Nino and La Nina. So this article is discussing about the pollution in our major cities such as Bombay and Delhi and how these pollutions are interrelated with the external phenomena such as El Nino and La Nina. Next article is calm assessment. This article is discussing about recent amendment in Forest Conservation Act and how and why Supreme Court has put a halt in the implementation of this amendment. And after that, we'll be discussing prelims and mains questions related with these articles. So let's start this. Embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada and Nellore. Our courses includes robust R&D backed initiatives such as first, daily news analysis and daily news read, comprehensive review program for a broader understanding of current affairs. Second, NCERT program, a foundational course that covers all NCERT syllabi crucial for UPSC preparation. Third, mentorship program for personalized guidance and regular test series for systematic learning and assessment. So, begin your journey to becoming a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. So, the first article for today's discussion is having panchayats as self-governing institutions. Mahatma Gandhi, he viewed local self-government as foundational as well as functional for India's democracy. Why? He argued and he supported for decentralized form of local self-government, right? And these local self-government should be accorded, should be given greater autonomy, greater accountability towards people and greater resources. And all these things are essential for true village self-governance or self-reliance, right? Eventually, these true village self-reliance will be helpful in people to participate in decision-making processes. And this is the democracy, right? This article is also discussing about these local self-government, how these local self-government can be helpful in promoting democracy, in establishing democracy at the grassroots level, and what are the issues grappling with these local self-government, specifically in terms of funds, right? So fund is a major concern this article is focusing upon, but we will be looking on other aspects as well, right? Why this article or this issue is associated with our UPSC syllabus? Of course, in essay, in GS paper 2, there is a topic devolution of powers and finances up to local levels and challenges therein. In GS paper 4, accountability and ethical governance. So this is how this topic is associated with our UPSC syllabus, right? Let's understand the importance of this whole topic from previous year question point of view. In 2022, UPSC asked this question in mains examination: to what extent, in your opinion, has the decentralization of power in India changed the governance landscape at the grassroots? So this question was asking about the functioning of local self-government institutions and how these decentralization is helpful in challenging and changing the governance landscape, right? What is the context? We have seen that since 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act that was enacted in 1993, it has been 3 decades. And after 3 decades, what is the status this article is assessing, right? Also, ministry, a dedicated ministry was established in 2004, and it's almost 2 decades that ministry was established. How this ministry and how these institutions are functioning and what are the major issues. So the basic issue is we need to educate, we need to sensitize not just elected representatives but also to the people. We need to educate people regarding, and we need to sensitize people regarding the public institutions, regarding the local self-government. There's also one issue: we need to create resources. We need to give more resources to the Panchayati to survive, right? Let's understand some brief background for this Panchayati Raj institution. This Panchayati Raj institution is not a new phenomenon. It's not just like after 73rd, 74th Amendment Act, this came into picture. Not just Britishers, even before Britishers, way before Britishers, in the ancient time, this Panchayati Raj institution, this local self-government had its existence, right? And it was known as Panchayats, right? Date back to ancient time. It played a very important and crucial role in the rural governance as well as the community welfare, right? But Britishers, it introduced and institutionalized modern Panchayati Raj system in India, right? This table is very important for your prelims examination as well as mains examination. This table and the information given in this table will be helpful as a fodder material for your arguments that you give in your mains exam, right, or mains paper, right? In 1951, the first step that was taken by government was community development program to develop rural India, right? So the thing is, rural India, majority of the people live in rural India. Still almost 70% people lives in rural India, right? And for overall development, we need to develop rural India or rural societies, right? You can give argument that in Article 40 of Indian Constitution, Panchayati Raj institution was enshrined, but this was firstly not in institutionalized form. Second, this was not mandatory provision, right? So that is why, as far as practical implication is concerned, this was the first approach through which government was trying to develop our rural societies or rural communities, right? 1953, first Panchayati Raj elections were held in Rajasthan, and this was the initiation of Panchayati Raj system post independence. In 1957, Balwant Rai Mehta committee was established, created. This committee recommended a 3-tier Panchayati Raj institution in India. It recommended establishment of Panchayati Raj institution in 3 levels, 3 tiers, and financial resource allocations were also recommended by Balwant Rai Mehta Committee. Next is 1959, State of Rajasthan. It passed Panchayati Raj Act, and it gave the legal framework for Panchayati Raj institution in that particular state, and it became model for other states as well. In 1962, central government established Ministry of Community Development and Cooperation. It strengthened the community development and cooperation, right? Ashok Mehta Committee was established in 1977. It suggested more powers and resources for PRIs and responsible for local planning and development, right? So this is society, government trying to develop rural India, right? And for which government is planning something, government is executing its plan, and then getting feedback for further improvement, right? In all these three processes, people who were the beneficiary, who were the ultimate beneficiary of these schemes were not involved, right? And that is why this kind of institutions were important, were imperative, right? In 1985, GVK Rao Committee was established. It recommended greater autonomy for PRIs and power to levy taxes and fees. This was the first step towards the funds, right? To give funds to the PRIs, right? 1986, LM Singhvi Committee was established, and it advocated for constitutional recognition and legal framework for Panchayati Raj institution to institutionalize these institutions, right? PK Thungan Committee was established in 1989, and it recommended constitutional recognition for these bodies. 1992, National Panchayati Raj Day was celebrated, established, and it gave recognition of contribution of PRIs. In 1993, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act were enacted. That covered. In 1996, Panchayati Raj Extension to Scheduled Areas PESA was established or passed, and it gave greater autonomy to tribal areas, because 73rd, 74th Amendment Act was not made compulsory for the tribal areas, right? And through this PESA Act, these 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act were extended towards or extended to the tribal areas. 2000, National Gram Swaraj Abhiyan were launched for the promotion of decentralized governance and strengthening PRIs. In 2007, Second Administrative Reform Commission, it upheld the principle of subsidiarity and clear function delineation for local governments. In 2011, Government of India launched National Rural Livelihood Mission. It empowered women and marginalized groups through PRIs, right? So all these processes, through all these mechanisms and tools, government wanted to empower PRIs, and through these PRIs, it wanted to establish more autonomous village, more self-governed, self-reliant villages for the rural development, right? So let's look into more detailed version of 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. These amendment acts or these amendments were effective for over 3 decades, aimed to establish local bodies in India as institution of self-governance. The Ministry of Panchayati Raj was established in 2004, that we have already discussed. There's also one concept. There is a group of people in a particular village, and they are able to vote, they are able to take decisions, right? These people becomes part of Gram Sabha. They are, or they should be, the major decision makers, right? They elect people, and that is called as Panchayats. So Gram Sabha, this is the most important body, and that is vested with majority of the powers, and this elect Panchayats. On behalf of this Gram Sabha, Panchayat takes decisions, right? So there is a role of Gram Sabha. Gram Sabha plays a crucial role in promoting self-sufficiency by engaging in planning and implementation of revenue-generating initiatives. they can levy taxes and direct funds towards the local development and welfare programs, right? So what is the current issues? This article is focusing on fund only, but we'll be looking at other fronts as well. For example, there is a very low fiscal devolution and revenue generation challenges. In political theories, there are two concepts. One is distribution and another is devolution. Between different tiers of the government, there can be two types of relation. One is distribution of power and another is devolution of power. Our constitution distributes the power between center and state, and this distribution is clear cut, right? States are not dependent upon the center for their power. So this is clear cut distribution of power. But what about devolution? Third tier, that is local self-government, are depending upon the state government for their power. It's state prerogative that how much power should be devolved to a particular local self-government, right? So this is called devolution. In terms of devolution, the lower tier of the government will always be depending upon the higher tier of the government, right? So in terms of fiscal powers or fiscal resources, also there is a devolution for the local self-government, right? And because of which only 1% of taxes are being generated by the local self-government, right? And most of their resources comes from the center and state. So there is a dependency on external funding. Almost 85 to 90% of their resources are drawn from center and state. And that is why center and state gets a advantageous position and they can dictate local self-government, right? There's also avenues for own source of revenue, that is OSR, and a committee was established, expert committee was established. It suggested for various OSR such as property tax, cess and surcharge on stamp duties, right? Toll tax or tolls, service fees. There's a difference between service charge and service fee. This is here we are discussing about service fee on like water and sanitation, right? So this can be taken by the local self-government, right? So expert committee recommended all these things to generate more revenue for the local self-government, but they are not doing this. There's a decreased interest in OSR collection because of two basic reasons. First is there's a local self-government financial strain because all the funds that they are getting from center and state, these are coming with some conditionalities, right? So this is the first issue, and they are becoming more dependent on the center and state. And second is there is an inadequate implementation of the State Finance Commission, right? Also, there is a reluctance to collect taxes. Why? Because Panchayati Raj institution or any local self-government institutions, they are directly related with the local people, and therefore they are more reluctant towards the collecting tax in favor of upcoming elections or in lieu of certain favors from the people in upcoming elections, right? So that is why they are reluctant towards collecting taxes. There are also certain issues associated with the functions that are given to the Panchayati Raj institution. First is there is a variation in devolution across the states, right? So across the states, some states are giving more or devolving more power to the local self-government. Some states are not devolving much power to the local self-government. Most states have not devolved adequate function to the local government bodies, right? And along with that, what is happening nowadays, like state governments are creating parallel institutions or parallel mechanisms. I would not say institution, but mechanisms for implementation of projects that surrounds or that are associated with agriculture, health, as well as education. So instead of giving power to the local self-government institutions, state governments are creating, or even central government are creating, parallel mechanism for the agriculture, health and education. And that is how they are bypassing the development of Panchayati Raj institution or local self-government, right? Local bodies lack support system necessary to carry out their mandates. And according to a study by the India Development Review, this is a think tank, district planning committees are non-functional in 9 states and fail to prepare integrated plans in 15 states. So this shows a very dismal picture of our public institution, specifically the local self-government. There's also problem in the functionaries. Every local government needs to have organizational capacity by way of staff such as office and clerical staff and social mobilizers. But these are not currently happening. These things are not currently happening, right? Staffing of local government is scanty. Many panchayats share a single secretary who is often overburdened, right? And that too, these secretaries are not even professionals, right? Because they don't have these public institutions, they don't have much funds to support a professional staff in their organization. Technology has been used to centralize the delivery of local services, which has been detrimental to local decision making. So this is also a concern, right? There are other challenges as well. For example, local government elections, particularly in urban areas, they tend to attract criminal enemies. So this criminalization and corruption of election is also creating hurdles in the local election and local institutions. Despite higher literacy and educational levels, urban residents show limited interest in municipal governance. So there is a very less voter turnout in local election as well. For example, the low voter turnout, 53% in Delhi and 55% in Mumbai during 2017 municipal elections. And currently you might have seen the Chandigarh mayor election as well. So there's a corruption involved in this type of elections as well, right? Other challenges like Sarpanch Pati syndrome in India. So women were given 33% reservation, but these reservations are not effective at the ground. Male counterpart are misusing or using these powers in the name of women, right? So what could be the way forward? Firstly, we need to sensitize and educate and incentivize elected representatives as well as people, right? Regarding fund, regarding function, regarding functionaries and the functionalities of all these things, right? And also we need to overcome the dependency of local self-government over center and state. So these are two recommendations that we can give at this point of time, at this juncture. Okay. Next article is why farmers protesting again. So 2 days before we discussed one article that was concerning over agro food policies in India, which were favoring consumers at the cost of producers, right? And there we saw various issues associated with farmers, right? This article is more focused on current demand, right? And the strategies associated with current farmers protest, right? In a larger framework, UPSC may ask about methodology and various demands of farmers, which are causing various social, economic and political issues in India, right? Why this is important for UPSC examination? In GS paper 1, there's a topic post-independence India. Here we'll be looking at various types or models of farmers movement in India post-independence. GS paper 3, there's a topic issues related to direct and indirect farm subsidies and MSP. This is the central point central argument of these protests, right? And effect of liberalization on the economy. So these things will be discussed here under this article. Let's understand the importance of this issue or this aspect, that what are the models, how people are protesting, how specifically how farmers are protesting, what are their demands, larger demands, specific demands in a particular moment. So why this thing is important for UPSC? In 2019, UPSC asked this question: what are the methods used by farmers organization to influence the policy makers in India, and how effective are these methods, right? So what is the context? Currently, on February 13th, a group of farmers heeded a call given by the Kisan Mazdoor Morcha. This organization is important, Kisan Mazdoor Morcha, right? And Samyukt Kisan Morcha. This Samyukt Kisan Morcha is a non-political organization, right? And began a march to national capital to press for fulfillment of their demands. What are those demands? We'll be looking in a couple of minutes, which include a legal guarantee for purchasing crops at MSP and a farm loan waiver, right? So let's understand the background first, right? What is the dynamics of farmers movement in India? How farmers movement were organized? What were the demands of farmers, various farmers movements in India? Let's understand these things. So before that, there's a difference between peasants and farmers. How? Peasants are landless, farmers having their own land, right? This is mostly, these peasants are mostly pre-independence phenomena, but even today there are certain peasants. Specifically, if we talk about peasant movement, the Naxal movement comes under the peasant movement, right? But farmers are mostly post-independence phenomena. These peasants work or produce for their subsistence, and farmers produce mostly for the commercial purposes and for market, right? So they are producing surplus. They are producing surplus grain, surplus agricultural products, right? There is a eminent sociologist. His name is Dipankar Gupta. This name is not important, but the concept given by Dipankar Gupta is important, and he gave two models for farmers movement in India, right? And based on Seldom. What is Seldom? S stands for structure. Structural includes resources. So there can be resources such as material resources, human resources, cultural resources. Cultural resources means previous experiences of any movement, right? So resources and organization. E stand for extent. L for leadership. This leadership is a part of this organization, but we will be differentiating between organization and leadership because of various reasons. We'll be looking on those points. D stands for demand. O for objective. Like previously we have seen, some organizations are non-political, some organizations are political, right? So these objectives should also be considered. And means, what are the means they are using? Mostly there are two major means used by farmers movement or farmers protest. One is literary tradition, using literary sources, literary tradition, and another is not using the literary tradition, using manual force or gherao or jam, right? So jamming the national highways. So these can be comes under the means, right? So based on this Seldom, he has given two models of farmers movement in India. But on the basis of this Seldom itself, we can create four basic models of farmers movement in India, right? So first is Bharatiya Kisan Union model, right? This Bharatiya Kisan Union model just after the independence, which was in the North India, it was concentrated in the North India. It was basically caste-based movements. The the propounders, the participants were based on certain caste category, mostly from the middle caste. Jat, Gujar, these were the caste who were participated in this Bharati Kisan Union model, or Bharati Kisan Union based protest or movements, right? The major leaders as well as the participants were either not educated, illiterate, or vernacularly educated. For example, Mahendra Singh Tikat, he was vernacularly educated person or leader, and that is why he had a very narrower worldview, right? So he not considered peasants or landless labor or other caste communities under his protest or movements, right? So he had a very local worldview because of this kind of educational background, right? Major demands were increase in farm subsidy, waiving off of utility charges, increase in the MSP, and market access. These were the major demands of this first model of uh, farmers movement, right? They never used literary tradition. What means they have used? Jamming highways and demonstration at national capitals, sit-ins, and kisan jails, right? So these were the means they have used, right? Second type of model is Shetkari Sangathan model. This was given by Dipankar Gupta himself, and this type of model or this type of protests were concentrated in the Maharashtra itself, Maharashtra region, right? This model or this movement was led by a very educated person. His name was Sharad Joshi. Sharad Joshi was the first person who gave the concept of Bharat versus India. He argued against the capital intensive approach of our paradigm of development in India just after the independence, and he supported for labor intensive sectors, labor incentive approach for the development, and that is why he incorporated all the manual labors in his protest, right, in his movement. Majorly, he focused on literary tradition. He used literary tradition approach for his movement or his protest, right? He incorporated all manual forms of labor. He was educated, so his worldview was very wider in comparison to the first model, and he wanted to bring structural reforms in the paradigm of development. He wanted bottom-up approach for the development of not even agriculture but also for the industries, right? And this organization was also non-political in nature, right? Third type of model or third model we can add as Karnataka Rajya Ryot Sangh model. Basically, in the southern part of India, this kind of protest we can observe, which is against the GM crops as well as any kind of advent of capitalism in agricultural sector. They argue that because of advent of capitalism, because of commercialization of agriculture, we witness farmers' suicide. Also, there is a lot of issues, environmental, social, economic, and political issues associated with GM crops and such type of intervention in our ecology, right? The major leader was Nanjuda Swami, and he established or he created movement against the GM crops. The whole movement was started against the GM crops, and the volunteers, they wear green scarves to support organic crops, right? They also used non-literary tradition for their movements, right? The fourth type of movement that we are witnessing right now, or since 2019 that we are witnessing, is the kind of all India Kisan Union models, right? This is the current form of protest, and major leaders such as Yogendra Yadav, they are focusing on both kind of means, literary tradition as well as non-literary tradition or non-literary approach. Leaders are highly educated, like Yogendra Yadav we have seen, and they are political as well as non-political. So it's a culmination of political as well as non-political. In fact, this fourth type of model is the, you can say, is a khichdi of all these three aforementioned models of farmers movement, right? Currently, what are the primary demands? The core demands of the protesting farmers right now includes a legal guarantee for the purchase of crops at the MSP by the government and a waiver of farm loans, right? There has been a lack of clarity and transparency in government's proposal, especially concerning the calculation method of MSP. So, like currently, government is focusing on A2 plus FL plus 50% formula. A2 means the all the inputs cost bear by the farmers. FL means family labor. So there is a opportunity cost when family is involved in agriculture, and this family labor is also being calculated by the government. But farmers as well as Swaminathan committee is asking for C2 plus 50% formula. This C2 incorporates A2 plus FL plus imputed rental value of owned land plus interest on fixed capital and rent paid for leased land. So now farmers and Swaminathan committee was asking for C2 plus 50% formula, but government is using A2 plus FL plus 50% formula. Beside MSP and loan waiver, farmers also demanding a monthly pension for farmers and farm laborers. Now you can see, now the first model that we have discussed so far, first model, the BKU model, was only focusing on the farmers. The second model, Shetkari Sangathan model or Sarat Joshi model, was also focusing on the farmers as well as the laborers, right? Now this movement is also focusing on all these laborers or manual workers, right? That has aged 58 and above, and withdrawal of Electricity Amendment Bill 2020, reintroduction of the Land Acquisition Act 2013 with provisions for consent and compensation, and 200 days of employment annually under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act at a daily wage of rupees 700. So this data is not important, but these days are important, because under this act 100 days guarantee is given to the people, in the rural people, but they are asking for 200 days, right? So these are the major demands that farmers are asking in this protest. Article is amount of tiny plastic particles in bottled water underestimated study. A study was conducted by Columbia University, and this study found out that there is underestimation of nanoplastic or presence of nanoplastic in water bottles that we are ingesting, right? So this article is important because it is discussing about plastic pollution, nanoplastics and microplastics. Along with that, this article is also discussing about a technology that is SRS mechanism, right? What is this SRS mechanism? Stimulated Raman scattering imaging technology. So this technology or this science is useful to visualize micro and nano particles or organisms, right? And this whole science is based upon, or this whole technology is based upon Raman scattering phenomena. Okay, why this is important? Because in prelims there is a topic, general issues on environment ecology. This article is discussing about plastic pollution, micro nano plastic, as well as SRS mechanism. Let's understand the issue, the importance of this issue from a previous year question point of view. 2021 UPSC asked about triclosan, right? So in future UPSC may ask about micro, macro, nano plastics as well, right? What is the context? Columbia University, they conducted study, proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, it's a journal in which they published the study, and they found out that whatever we have estimated earlier about nanoparticles or pollution related with the nanoparticles in a particular water bottle was incorrect, and they found out that there are almost 1 lakh particles of micro and nanoplastics in 1 liter of water bottle. What is plastic pollution? Firstly, what is plastic? Plastics are nothing but polymeric material. What is polymeric material? Polymeric material made up with some monomeric compounds. This can be inorganic, this can be organic compounds. When we attach these monomeric compound in a large volume in a specific arrangement, this becomes polymeric material, right? This can be natural, this can be synthetic or man-made, right? But the plastics are not natural polymers, they are synthetic plastics or synthetic polymers, right? And because of which it resists natural decay process, and that is why it becomes more hazardous for our health as well as our ecology, right? Initially it was started with bakelite. Bakelite was invented in 1907. It marked the introduction of synthetic plastic resins, right? What were the outcomes of the study? What study has found out? It found out that there are 24 lakhs micro and nanoplastic particles per liter of water, bottled water, right? And approximately 90% of them are nanoplastics. Almost remaining 10% are microplastic, and these microplastic can also be degraded to nanoplastics, and these nanoplastics are very hazardous for our health, right? Some examples of micro and nanoplastics they have mentioned in this article: polyamide 66, this is also known as nylon 66. This is a polymeric compound or polymer, also known as nylon 66, and it is made up with, or the monomers are hexamethyl diamide and adipic acid. This can be helpful for your prelims examination. Polypropylene, this is also another type of plastic, and the monomer is propylene. Polyethylene, the monomer is ethylene. Polymethyl methacrylate, the monomer is methyl methacrylate. Polyvinyl chloride, vinyl chloride is a monomer. And polystyrene, the monomer is styrene. And polyethylene terephthalate, the monomer is ethylene terephthalate, right? And because of different types of monomers, you can see there are different types of monomers, because of which we are getting different kind of polymers. The composition and the size of micro or nanoplastics can vary. Okay, so the plastic particles nature vary in terms of composition, shapes and sizes, because of obvious reason, because it's made up of different monomers, right? For example, polystyrene, these particles are around 100 to 200 nanometer in size. What about PET particles? They have a size around 1 to 2 micrometers, right? Plastic items can undergo degradation into sub micrometers fragments, right? And one more thing, it can break down into sub micrometer pieces that we have seen. It can further degrade into nano plastics, and that is more detrimental for our health. What are the challenges associated with plastic pollution? First is ocean pollution. How? From 1 million metric tons in 1950 to 359 million metric tons by 2018, we have increased polythene or plastic in our ocean. And this surge in plastic pollution in ocean environment is the biggest concern right now, right? There are millions of metric tons plastics we are exposing to oceans annually, and we are creating great Pacific garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. This is affecting our marine life in two sense: ingestion and entanglement. How? Because of this entanglement, we are losing our biodiversity, right? Because of ingestion, there are two phenomena. One is bioaccumulation and another is biomagnification. What is bioaccumulation? If a specific organism is ingesting plastic, it is getting accumulated in that particular organism. That is bioaccumulation. But when this plastic accumulation in a particular trophic or organism is transferring itself into food web or food chain, it is creating phenomena that is called as biomagnification. How? For example, an organism, let's suppose, contains X percentage of plastic. When another organism, it is eating that particular organism, this X percent getting increased or gets increased in next trophic level, right? So this is called biomagnification. There's also terrestrial pollution. It is clogging our drainage system. It is affecting our wildlife because of this biomagnification. And there is also problem of chemical leaching, right? There's also poor cycling rates. Almost 10% plastics are being recycled globally annually. And because of this, because of poor recycling rate, it is creating a challenge in processing as well, right? There are also menace of single-use plastic. It constitutes 50% of total plastics. It's tough to segregate, recycle, and reuse. That is why we are avoiding single-use plastic, and it also contributes to environmental pollution that we have already seen, right? Next article is El Nino, La Nina. This article is discussing about a study or quoting a study that is jointly conducted by IITM and NIAS. IITM is Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology and NIAS is National Institute of Advanced Studies, right? And this study is arguing that there is a direct correlation or linkage between pollution in Indian cities with external factors such as El Nino, La Nina, and eventually climate change. Why this is important for us? Because prelims, there's a topic general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity, and climate change. And GS paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, environment impact assessment is in the UPSC syllabus, right? And this article is discussing about air pollution, and that is related to the external factors. So let's understand the importance of this topic through previous year question. 2014 UPSC asked about drought and its relation with external factors such as majorly El Nino, right? Also in the prelims examination, UPSC directly asked this question about La Nina. So that is why this article or this whole issue becomes very important. What is the context? The new study by NIAS and IITM has linked air pollution over cities like Delhi and Mumbai to external factors such as El Nino, La Nina, and eventually climate change. So what is El Nino? Southern oscillation. Let's suppose this is Australia and this is South America and this is Pacific Ocean, right? Usually the coast of South America, the western coast of South America or eastern part of Pacific Ocean is getting cold current, and this is colder than that of Australian coast, Australian eastern coast or western part of Pacific Ocean, right? Because of this difference in temperature, along with the trade wind that you can see here, that is in this direction, the wind flows from South American coast, specifically Peruvian coast, to the Australian coast at the surface level, and at the upper atmospheric level this goes like this in the opposite direction, right? And it creates a cycle that is known as Walker cycle. Okay, usually because of this cold current, because of desiccating effect given by cold current, plus because of wind that is going offshore of the or from the South American coast, and because of the wind that is subsiding here, South American coast is not getting rainfall, right? But what about Australian coast? This is getting a lot of rainfall in normal years. Sometimes what is happening, upwelling. Upwelling means some warm water is moving upward in at the Southern American coast, right? To Peruvian coast or Southern American coast, some warm water is going upward from the bottom of surface of ocean to surface level. This is called upwelling, and because of this upwelling, this area becomes warmer, and because of the fact that it is getting warmer, this Walker cell gets weakened, right? So this is the phases of ENSO, that is El Nino Southern Oscillation. During normal years, this Walker cell works like this, right? But because of this upwelling and warming up of Southern American coasts, this El Nino occurs, and this El Nino weakens the Walker cell, and because of which we see or witness lesser rainfall at the Australian coast and more rainfall at the Peruvian coast. And this is also affecting Indian monsoon, and during El Nino period, Indian monsoon becomes weaker, and during La Nina period, Indian monsoon becomes more stronger, right? And during this La Nina, this Walker cell gets more strengthened, right? So this is the basic phenomena. These are the basic phases of ENSO. These two institutions are also using SUFFER. What is SUFFER? It's a system of air quality forecasting and research. It provides real-time data with criteria: pollutants, ozone, oxides of nitrogen and carbon monoxide, particulate matters, PM 2.5 and PM 10, right? Benzene, toluene, xylene, and black carbon. So these are the parameters, or these are the criteria pollutants that SUFFER is using to assess and to give glimpse over the air quality of Indian cities, right? It was developed by Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, Pune, and weather information and forecasting is done by Indian Meteorological Department. Last article for today's discussion is calm assessment. This article is discussing about a very crucial, very vital concept known as deemed forest. This is very important for our environment, ecology, and biodiversity, and India's approach toward climate change, right? How we'll be looking in a couple of minutes. But regarding definition of deemed forest, or regarding the approach toward deemed forest, there are two basic approach. One is government's approach, how government is looking or central government is looking at the deemed forest, and how environmentalists are looking at the deemed forest. There are two different approach. Both are antagonistic to each other, but for government's approach, for government's view, they bought Forest Conservation Amendment Act 2023, and Supreme Court currently has halted or give a temporary pause to this Amendment Act which was done in 2023, right? So what is the issue? What is deemed for it? What is issue associated? What are the issues associated with this deemed forest, and what are the area of contention we'll be discussing. But why this is important for our UPSC exam? Firstly, for prelims exam, this deemed forest is important. Also, the acts that we are going to discuss here are important, because UPSC is now keen or more interested in asking analytical questions. So that is why this aspect you can expect in the UPSC prelims exam this year, right? In mains GS paper 3, there is a topic conservation, environmental pollution and degradation is also associated with this topic. Let's understand the importance with the help of previous year question. 2020 UPSC asked, examine the status of forest resources of India and its resultant impact on climate change. So forest resources and its impact on climate change, and what are the conservation mechanism that we are deploying. What is the context? Supreme Court has put a temporary pause on the Center's Forest Conservation Amendment Act 2023. What is this issue all about? So let's suppose this is our society. There are certain patches of land that are already recognized as a forest by governments, whether it's central government or state government. Government has recognized certain patches of land as forest. But there are also certain lands which have similar or same ecological significance, but yet not recognized as forest by the government. Whether these areas should be given equal importance in comparison to recognized forest or not. This is the first thing, right? And how this recognition should be given and how to protect these patches, there's also another concern, right? So for overall conservation of forest, government brought Forest Conservation Act of 1980 for overall conservation, either recognized or not recognized. And this law was enacted to protect forests from rampant conversion to non-forest causes or uses. So there's an established fact that climate change is happening. Climate change, we are going to witness climate change. And major reason, or one of the major reason, is deforestation, right? So to prevent climate change, to protect ourselves from climate change, to mitigate climate change, we need to adopt afforestation policy. We need to protect our forest resources. We need to stop deforestation, right? And for that, we needed this act, and government brought this act, right? It required government approval for such conversions and significantly reduced the rate of deforestation, right? But here comes the problem. What if some patches or forests are not recognized by government, right? So for that, Goda Varman judgment by Supreme Court in 1996 came into picture, and this Supreme Court ruling expanded the definition of forest to include areas that might not be officially classified as forest but still have ecological significance. In this judgment, under this judgment, Supreme Court argued that you should follow, or government should follow, dictionary definition and should not be stuck into some straight-jacketed framework to cover or to conserve our forests, right? So these unrecognized forests but have equal ecological significance becomes deemed forests, right? These forests are known as deemed forests, and states were ordered to identify as well as to protect them, right? This was the order given by the Supreme Court in Goda Varman judgment in 1996. But there is an issue in the deemed forest, or the definition or clarity on the deemed forest, right? Initially, what happened? Some states were not acted upon the judgment given by, or direction given by, the Supreme Court, and some states were lagging behind, but they identified, but they did not publicize all the forests that they identified under deemed forest, right? So central government, to improve the situation, to improve the ecological and economic aspect of deemed forest, they brought amendment, and in 2023 they excluded deemed forests that aren't already recognized as forests from the protection, right? Why? First reason, let's suppose you are a capitalist, right? You want to establish an industry in a particular area that is recognized as forest, right? So you have to do some deforestation. For that, there is a already act known as CAMPA, Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Act, and authority as well, right? So under which this capitalist or you can do some afforestation in another patch of land if you are deforestation, or if you are doing deforestation at this land. At the expense of this afforestation, you can do deforestation for this particular land, right? This is CAMPA or CAMPA provision, right? This plantation or this afforestation or specifically plantation comes under private land, right? Now, this private land is now considered as deemed forest, and that should also be given protection by the state government or the central government. If they are given or they are being given protection from the state government, these lands or these afforestation or these plantation cannot be used for economic purposes, and that is preventing capitalists for any kind of afforestation under this CAMPA rule, right? CAMPA provisions. So that is why government tried to exclude this deemed forest provisions under this Amendment Act, just to ensure that private individuals or capitalists are more or become more interested in plantation, private plantation and private afforestation. The justification was given by the government, and they argued that this will remove uncertainty and promote private plantation, which act as carbon sink and help India reach its climate change goals, right? What is private plantation? So private plantation or forest planted by individuals or companies can act as carbon sinks. They absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, helping to mitigate climate change. The government believes that by removing the fear of land being reclassified as protected forest, more people will be willing to invest in private plantation, thus aiding India's climate goal. So this was the government's approach, or this was the government's observation, and this was a justification why they brought this Amendment Act, right? Since this article is also mentioning NDC, nationally determined contribution, so we have to see what are the NDCs or India's NDC or India's climatic goal that we promised under Paris Agreement, right? So first is we promised to reduce our emission intensity of GDP by 45% below the 2005 level by 2030. This is important for prelims as well as mains. We want to achieve 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based resources by 2030. And third is we want to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. And this provision, this amendment was intended to bring this third NDC that we promised, right? What are the counter arguments given by the environmentalists? They fear that, or they worry that the amendments will weaken forest protection and lead to more deforestation that will jeopardize biodiversity. How? Let's suppose you want to deforest, or you want to deforest a particular area or patch of land, right? And in comparison to that, or correspondingly, you are creating some afforestation, right? This afforested land you can use further or in future for economic purpose, and there also this deforestation is killing our biodiversity, right? So in both the ways, you are killing the biodiversity in the particular area, because plantation is also against the biodiversity. Plantation, if you are doing plantation, you are showing only a single or particular specific plant or tree, right? Also, these plants can also further be used in some economic purposes. So these plantation, even though these are creating some carbon sink for a particular period of time, but later on this can also be utilized by some capitalists. That is also antagonistic to environmental friendly policies, right? And India's climate action commitments. Carbon sink question, it is debated whether the lack of private plantation is truly due to fear of the current law or other factors, right? So whether private intention is to bring or to ensure carbon sink or not, that is also questioned by the environmentalists. So what is Supreme Court's recent intervention? Currently, Supreme Court has put hold or some temporary pause on 2023 amendment. Also, Supreme Court ordered for more transparency in terms of deemed forest, and they ordered the government to disclose all states' progress on identifying deemed forest, right? What could be the way forward for that, or what could be the way forward for this contention? There's a political context. Forest protection is a complex issue in India where tensions often exist between development needs and environmental concerns, right? So there is a trade-off between development versus protection or environmental protection. We need to take care of these two things, both the things, right? We need not to focus, or we need not to lean more towards a particular area, but we have to make a balance between development and protection, right? We need not to make a trade-off between these things. Second, the importance of data. An evidence-based approach is needed, because still state governments are not giving any data or not publicizing any data with regard to deemed forest. Knowing where deemed forests exist will inform how best to protect them, and while encouraging responsible development and reaching climate goals. We need to go beyond the law. Practical issues like effective monitoring and enforcement of forest protection measures are also critical. Okay. So far, we have discussed all the important articles for today. Let's have some practice questions. First question, consider the following about plastic pollution. Microplastic outnumber nanoplastic in terms of parts per thousand in water worldwide, according to findings. This is incorrect. Research indicates that plastic items can undergo degradation into sub-micrometer fragments, allowing them to penetrate biological barriers. That is correct. Microplastics are biodegradable while the nanoparticles are not. This statement is incorrect. So C part would be correct answer. With respect to El Nino Southern Oscillation, consider the following statements. El Nino is characterized by unusually warm ocean temperature in the equatorial Indian Ocean. That is incorrect. And El Nino has an adverse effect on the southwest monsoon, but La Nina has no effect on the monsoon climate. This is wrong, because La Nina, it reinforces or strengthens the Indian monsoon, right? So this statement is also incorrect. D would be correct answer. Which of the following pollutants mentioned below are monitored under sulfur? We have already discussed. Ozone, yes. Oxides of nitrogen, yes. Carbon dioxide, no. Carbon dioxide nahi, carbon monoxide. Particulate matters, yes. Benzene, toluene, yes. So C part would be correct answer. Consider the following statements. regarding the Forest Conservation Amendment Act 2023. The act exempts land within 100 kilometer of India's border from purview of the act. This is correct statement. The act allows for the establishment of zoos and safari parks inside forest area. This is also correct statement. So C part would be the correct answer. Let's practice some mains question. What are the methods used by farmers organization to influence the policy makers in India, and how effective are these methods? So firstly, we have to discuss what are farmers movement, what are their intention, how these farmers movements are or farmers organizations are working as a pressure group, right? An interest group. Then we have to discuss about, in the body part, we need to discuss about the various methodology or various models under which there are multiple methods that they are using, and how these methods are impacting policy makers or our policies, right? Also, we need to assess, because it's written here, how effective are these methods. So we have to assess as well how these methods or means used by farmers movements are strengthening our democracy, reaching its goal, and how these methods are antithetical to democratic principles as well, right? So in introduction, we have to explain farmers organization and movements as interest groups and pressure groups. In body, models of farmers movements that have different demands, different means, along with the critical assessment of their impacts. Also, we need to explain how these movements are supporting or re-strengthening democracy or antithetical to democratic principle. In conclusion, while each method has its strength and challenges, the combined use of multiple strategies tends to be most effective approach for farmers organization to influence policy maker in India. So we have to give some positive note towards this. The effectiveness is also contingent upon the political environment, the level of public support, and the capacity of the organization to sustain the campaigns. You can also add points such as what are the methods, the impact of leadership, the impact of extent can be used in the conclusion as well as body part, right? Thank you. If you like our initiative, please like,